A powerful tropical cyclone has made landfall in Mozambique. The storm comes just 6 weeks after another cyclone devastated the country, killing hundreds and displacing more than 100,000 others. Mozambique is one of Africa's poorest countries, and the last storm wiped out many of the crops in the southern African nation. This is the first time in known history that country has been hit with 2 cyclones in one season. 2 cyclones in one season, and that will complicate recovery efforts. CBS News weather producer David Parkinson joins me now to talk more about this potentially devastating storm. So that is a remarkable statistic.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing potentially about it, right? I mean, this is a devastating storm. The wind speed when it was making landfall is equivalent to a Category 4 hurricane in the U.S. Just keep that in mind. When you hear hurricane cyclone, it's just what ocean and what hemisphere it's in. But all in all, it's the same sort of dangerous wind, flooding rains. And what we're seeing out of this storm that's really pretty fantastic is, despite the fact that it has just disappeared essentially from the satellite, you see that big ball there that just collapses in on itself? That's the land tearing it up, but there's so much moisture associated with it that in reality you are dealing with something that is going to be a rainstorm that's going to bring in a whole lot of rain. 2 or 3 feet of rain is potential with this storm system. But when we take a look at sort of the track of this storm here, you can see there it is. The wind speeds go much lower in the very near term. That's Eastern European time that they're using there, just so it's a bit ahead of the U.S. But just so you're kind of aware, it's making an inland track there. It will be dropping a lot of rain in that central area. When we take a look at the rainfall projections, anywhere in white, when we advance this map here, you'll see anywhere shaded in white will be 2 to 3 feet of rain. There, it's coming in there, and that's on top of what they've already picked up, right? It's been raining for the past 12 to 24 hours. This is all new rain. So there are spots that are going to wind up with 36 or 40 inches of rain in the northern part of the country. It's interesting to note in the past 6 decades, as long as they've been keeping records, no storm of this power has made landfall in that part of Mozambique.
Mozambique and neighboring states are still struggling tonight to rescue victims of a deadly storm and reach others with aid. The cyclone killed hundreds when it struck last week, but the dimensions of the disaster are still coming into focus. From above, the destruction is near total and stretches as far as the eye can see. Homes in this Mozambique port city of Beira are now flattened, flooded, and covered in mud and debris. A tropical cyclone tore through this edge of southern Africa on Friday and headed into Malawi and Zimbabwe on Saturday. Julia Luis is a mother of 3 in Beira. Her family lost everything.
We don't have anything to eat here. No food, nothing. It's a problem. At night, we don't eat. We don't even have a blanket to cover ourselves with. We only have the clothes we are wearing.
Huge swaths of land were left underwater in Mozambique, what one aid worker calls an inland ocean. Survivors have been stranded in trees and on rooftops as floodwaters continue to rise. The International Red Cross describes the damage as massive and horrifying. The United Nations says more than 1.7 million people were in the cyclone's path in Mozambique alone. More than 400,000 have been displaced. With hard-hit areas accessible only by helicopter, this medical rescue team dropped into the floodwaters and swam through swift currents to find one stranded family, perched on a small pile of debris in a lone grove of trees. The group said they've carried out more than 50 rescues just like this. UN officials said today this may be the worst cyclone-related disaster ever in the southern hemisphere, and the full scale is yet to be seen.
All over is water. You see water. If people are lucky, they're on the roof, the rooftop of the house, and they sign, they ask for help. But a lot of other people that we know nothing about for the moment are not as lucky as that.
Getting aid into the region will be a daunting job. Residents have been forced to carry crates of bread and other supplies around collapsed bridges and roads. Meanwhile, electric power is out nearly everywhere. All of this in a country where some 45% of the total population is under 15 years old. It all but ensures that children will bear the brunt of this disaster and a recovery that could last decades.
It's being described as the worst humanitarian crisis in Mozambique's history. Heavy flooding and prolonged bouts of rain are compounding the destruction wreaked by Cyclone Idai last week. The storm and flood waters not only engulfed roads and bridges. They also wiped out communications networks across the region. And many of Idai's victims are once again finding themselves in danger. This mother is one of hundreds of thousands who lost their home. She's worried about her newborn as food supplies in the shelter run low.
Since last night, I haven't eaten anything. Yesterday, I saw that food was running out. I went and asked, and they told me that food was over, and until now, I've had none.
That's because the floods and heavy rain which followed in the storm's wake are hindering aid workers' efforts. In some areas, floodwaters are meters deep. Most rural areas remain cut off from help.
As you can see around us, it's atrocious weather conditions. The weather is still persisting, and despite that, everybody is helping, and we're offloading 20 tons of cargo manually by hand.
Rescuers are also working around the clock to save lives. Many victims are still trapped on rooftops, trees, and other remote areas. And the region is bracing for more heavy rain in the coming days. Flooding has become the biggest threat Mozambique is facing right now.
Let's bring in Jamie Lesueur. He's the emergency response manager for the Red Cross in Beira, which has been especially hard hit. Good morning to you, Jamie. The UN is calling this the worst storm disaster to hit Africa in decades. What's the situation where you are?
Well, it's still raining. We can do that, and it's going to rain for a couple days more. So we're on the second disaster in a few days, and it's actually going to get worse potentially. We know that Cyclone Idai hit us directly in Beira, and that it continued on towards Zimbabwe. Amount of water. So the flood disaster is another disaster on top of the cyclone damage. So we're keeping visibility on both, and our focus for the operation right now is immediate life-saving activities. Search and rescue, making sure people get food, blankets, shelter, water, everything they need to stay alive, because this is where our focus is at the moment.
Okay, getting resources to keep people alive. Where are people going right now with so much of Beira flooded and uninhabitable?
We're setting up accommodation centers. There have been 37 established in Beira, and that number is expecting to increase. That's for the cyclone-affected population. For those who are flood-affected, we're also moving them to accommodation centers to keep them set up. We have rapid response team going out in helicopters this morning to support moving people from their houses, from the top of their roofs on their houses, and in from the trees to put them on safe and dry land. We're doing everything we can with our aerial assessments to make sure we're going to not at-risk places for future flooding that are completely dry and where we can get access to them quickly. This is one of the main challenges for all of us here.
Okay, it certainly sounds very challenging. Jamie, are you managing?
From the flooded area.
Are you managing to find safe and dry areas that are going to be safe, even with, as you said, the new rains coming on?
Yes, for us, this is a non-negotiable point. We absolutely need to find low-risk, safe, dry areas. So we have international experts in shelter from around the world that are supporting on this. The Red Cross is a co-lead of the shelter strategy here and helping to ensure that we're finding that dry land and setting up the places where our people need to be.
Jamie, thanks so very much for coming in, being with us today. Jamie Lesueur, and all the best to you from Emergency Response with the Red Cross.